The galaxy was restless. Whispers traveled through the void like sparks on dry wood. The great alien empires had been watching Earth for a long time, measuring humans like animals in a cage. Reports said humans were fragile, reckless, and stubborn. They were called a death world species only because their planet was dangerous, not because they were truly strong. At least, that was what the Council of Stars believed. But when war came, the truth showed itself in fire. The Council had ordered a strike on a human colony at the edge of space. It was meant to be a warning, a lesson for Earth to know its place. No one expected the humans to fight back the way they did. Ships that were old and slow moved with daring, skill. Soldiers with nothing but light armor stood against towering alien machines. Every battle screamed of desperation, yet they did not break. On the ground, the fighting was worse. The alien warriors were bred for combat, their bodies shaped by centuries of genetic craft. They were taller, stronger, faster. Against them, humans should have fallen in minutes. But again and again, the aliens saw something strange. Humans refused to surrender. Even when their bones cracked, even when their blood stained the soil, they kept rising. Their enemies struck harder, and still the humans endured. The alien commanders began to whisper among themselves. Something was wrong. The humans should have broken by now. Every other race they had faced gave up after losing half their forces. The humans, however, seemed to grow more dangerous as the fight went on. Their willpower was a weapon no one had counted on. Among the soldiers was one man who drew special attention. His name was Daniel. He was not the strongest among his people, not the fastest, not even the most trained. But he carried something that unsettled the enemy. He never gave up. No matter how many times he was hit, no matter how much pain he felt, Daniel kept moving. His comrades began calling him the Hammer because every time the aliens thought they had crushed him, he struck back even harder. Daniel's unit was trapped during one of the largest battles. Alien war beasts circled them, their claws sharp enough to cut steel. The alien warriors marched forward in perfect rhythm, confident this would be the end. Yet Daniel refused to yield. He lifted a broken weapon, its power core flickering, and shouted for his squad to hold. His voice carried strength his body should not have had. The humans rallied around him, fighting until the sky itself burned. That battle ended with both sides retreating, but the story of the Hammer spread quickly. Alien spies carried tales of a human who should have been broken, yet fought as though pain only made him stronger. The Council dismissed it at first, calling it luck, calling it myth. But the front lines told a different truth. Every alien who faced him said the same thing. He would not stop. One alien warrior, a commander named Solara, witnessed it herself. She had trained all her life, mastering weapons that could cut through armor like paper. She had fought against beasts on her homeworld that could crush ships with their jaws. Yet nothing unsettled her like watching Daniel rise again after being struck down. His ribs were broken, his breath ragged, but his eyes burned with fire. She whispered in disbelief during the battle, "Your tool should be broken." She meant his body, his spirit, his will, but somehow it was not. The words traveled fast. Soon across the stars, soldiers repeated the phrase. It was no longer just a whisper of fear. It was the beginning of a legend. Humanity's endurance was not a weakness. It was a power the galaxy had never seen before. And Daniel, the Hammer, was about to show them just how far that power could go. The war dragged on. Every day the humans faced enemies who outnumbered them, yet they held their ground. The Council of Stars had expected a quick surrender, but instead they were caught. In a storm of resistance, whole fleets were lost because humans refused to retreat, even when the odds were hopeless. Daniel, the Hammer, had become a symbol. Soldiers spoke his name in hushed voices, and even civilians across the colonies shared his story. He was proof that humans could not be crushed. When he appeared on the battlefield, morale surged like a wave. Men and women fought harder just to stand beside him. His presence alone was enough to make them believe victory was possible. Solara, the alien, Commander, who had first spoken the words, "Your tool should be broken," could not get him out of her mind. She had seen warriors fall in countless battles, but none had risen the way Daniel did. In her culture, strength was measured by how quickly you destroyed your enemy. But this human changed everything. He showed strength by refusing to fall, by forcing his body to keep moving long after it should have given out. She began watching him carefully from a distance. Every time their armies clashed, she searched for him. She expected him to fail eventually, to finally collapse and prove her first judgment right. But battle after battle, he kept going. He bled. He limped. His armor shattered. But he still pressed forward. The council grew uneasy. Reports of Daniel's endurance reached their chambers, and they dismissed it as human propaganda. Yet fear crept in. Other alien soldiers had begun to ask themselves a dangerous question. If one human could fight this way, what would happen if all humans learned to fight like him? Daniel himself never thought of becoming a legend. To him, the war was personal. His family was trapped in one of the colonies under alien control, and he fought not for glory but to see them free again. Every wound, every scar he carried was fuel for his determination. He could not quit, no matter the pain. He told himself that if he stopped, the people depending on him would be lost. The aliens launched a massive offensive one night, sending an army twice the size of anything the humans had faced before. Solara was among the commanders. She believed this would finally break the hammer. As the first wave hit, Daniel and his unit were forced back, the sky raining with fire. Explosions tore the ground, and human soldiers fell one after another. Solara charged forward, her blade glowing with energy, slicing through human defenses. She reached Daniel himself in the chaos. For the first time, they faced each other directly. She struck him with all her strength, her weapon cutting across his armor. He stumbled, blood pouring from the wound. Any other being would have collapsed. Solara thought it was finished, but Daniel rose again. He blocked her second strike with his broken weapon, sparks flying as steel met alien crystal. His eyes burned with rage and determination. He pushed her back with a roar, swinging with force that should have been impossible for someone so injured. Solara's arms shook as she struggled to hold her ground. Around them, the battle paused as both sides watched. The sight of Daniel standing, tall after such a blow, filled the humans with wild courage. They shouted and charged, their morale exploding like fire. Even Solara's soldiers hesitated, shaken by the humans' refusal to fall. Daniel forced Solara back step by step until she withdrew, her pride wounded more than her body. For the first time in her life, she questioned the strength of her own kind. This human should not have been able to move, and yet he fought like a storm that would never end. That night, the aliens failed to break the humans. Daniel's stand had turned what should have been a crushing defeat into a stalemate. Across the front lines, one message spread louder than ever: the hammer never quits. The battle had shaken the alien armies. Solara could not erase the memory of Daniel standing tall when his body should have failed him. She returned to her command ship, restless and silent, ignoring the praise of her subordinates. To them, she was still victorious for surviving, but she knew the truth. She had not beaten him. Her people believed that strength was absolute. They had conquered dozens of worlds with that belief. Yet Daniel had forced her to question everything. She began to study human reports, watching recordings of their battles. Again and again, she saw the same pattern. Humans fought hardest when they should have been finished. The more pain they suffered, the more dangerous they became. The council ordered Solara to lead another strike, this time aimed directly at the heart of the human defenses. The aliens believed that by cutting off Daniel's unit, they could finally destroy him and end the whispers that weakened their soldiers. Solara accepted, but part of her wondered if she truly wanted him broken. Meanwhile, Daniel recovered in a field hospital. His wounds were deep, his ribs bound tightly, and every breath was pain. The doctors told him to rest, to stay down, but he refused. He rose from the bed long before he should have, pulling on shattered armor and picking up a weapon that barely worked. His comrades begged him to wait, but he only shook his head. "If I stop now, everything ends," he said quietly. His squad, followed him, not because they believed he was invincible, but because he made them believe they were. With Daniel in front, no soldier felt like defeat was certain. That strange fire in his eyes lit theirs too. When the alien offensive began, the sky turned to fire, ships rained down destruction, and beasts the size of towers charged through the fields. Daniel's unit was surrounded, exactly as the aliens had planned. Solara herself led the vanguard, her eyes fixed on him. The fighting was brutal. Humans fell, but they fell fighting, clawing and striking until the last breath. Daniel stood at the center shouting orders, holding the line even as enemy after enemy crashed into him. His armor cracked, his weapon bent, yet he refused to stop. He fought with fists when his blade broke, with stones when no gun was left. Every strike was heavy, like a hammer against iron. Solara clashed with him again. Their battle shook the ground, blades sparking, roars echoing through the smoke. She struck him across the chest and he dropped to one knee, blood staining the earth. She raised her weapon for the final blow. Soldiers on both sides watched, holding their breath. But Daniel did not fall. With a cry that tore from deep within, he surged upward, slamming his broken weapon into her guard. The impact forced her back, her arms trembling from the shock. She had never seen such will. She had never faced an enemy who turned wounds into fuel. For the first time, Solara hesitated. She saw his body shaking, every bone screaming to give up. Yet his eyes still blazed, daring her to try again. Her own soldiers faltered, unsure if victory was possible. She lowered her blade slightly, confused and unsettled. The battle ended in chaos. The humans escaped the trap, rallying behind Daniel's stand. The aliens withdrew, their morale shaken worse than ever. And the legend grew. Across the galaxy, one phrase spread like fire. Your tool should be broken, but it never is. Solara sat alone that night staring at her reflection. She was no longer certain who the real victor was. The human had planted doubt in her heart, a doubt more dangerous than any weapon, and she knew deep down that this war was only beginning. DD. Human defenses grew stronger with every failed alien assault. What should have been a quick war was turning into something far more dangerous. The Council of Stars was restless, demanding answers. How could a species so fragile resist this long? Why did their armies not break? Reports came back with the same unsettling truth, because they followed the one they now called the Hammer. Daniel never asked to be a symbol, yet the war had made him one. Every scar he carried, every step he refused to stop taking, made others believe in him more. When soldiers saw him rise from wounds that should have ended him, they rose too. He did not command through fear or pride. He commanded by showing that no matter how much pain weighed him down, he would never quit. Solara felt the change in her own ranks. She was a commander who had always been certain of victory, but her soldiers no longer carried the same faith. She heard whispers in their camps, fear disguised as mockery. The hammer should be broken. They repeated it nervously, but the words no longer mocked the human. They admitted what none dared to say aloud, that he was unbreakable. Solara wrestled with thoughts she had never allowed before. She studied every report of Daniel, searching for weakness. Yet what she found unsettled her more. There was no secret weapon, no hidden advantage. His strength came from something her people could not measure. It came from within. When the council ordered another strike, Solara's doubts grew heavier. This time they wanted her to capture Daniel alive. They wanted to study him, to cut him apart and discover how a human could endure such punishment. She nodded in obedience, but inside, something rebelled. She had fought him face to face. She had seen the fire in his eyes. To deliver him like an animal felt dishonorable, yet she could not refuse her leaders. On the human side, Daniel pushed himself harder than ever. His body ached with every movement. Old wounds burned like fire, and the medics warned him that his strength would not last. But Daniel ignored them. He could not stop, not while his family remained under alien control, not while his people depended on him. Each time he looked at his broken weapon, He reminded himself that even shattered tools could still strike. The next battle came without warning. Alien forces struck at night, pouring into the human camps with precision and fury. Solara led the charge, her soldiers swarming forward with nets, energy restraints, and weapons designed not to kill, but to trap. Their target was clear: Daniel. The camp erupted into chaos. Humans fought desperately, but the aliens pushed through with sheer numbers. Daniel rushed to the front, swinging his weapon like a storm, tearing through every line that tried to hold him. Sparks and blood filled the air. His squad surrounded him, refusing to let him fall. But the trap was set. Solara faced him once more, their blades clashing under the burning night sky. She struck with speed, forcing him back step by step. For every wound he had suffered before, she landed another. Yet still he rose. Her soldiers closed in, binding his arms, striking his legs, dragging him down. For a moment it seemed the hammer would finally be taken. But Daniel roared with a strength that shattered their hold. He tore through restraints, bleeding and gasping, but still alive. His men rallied, forcing the aliens back in a storm of defiance. Solara watched in disbelief as he broke free from a dozen traps, his body failing but his will unshaken. Her soldiers fell back, shaken and afraid. Solara stood frozen, her weapon trembling. She had been ordered to capture him, but what she saw made her hesitate. She could kill him. She could strike him down. Yet part of her refused. Instead, she lowered her blade. She told herself it was strategy, but deep down, she knew the truth. Something about this human made her hesitate in ways she had never known. Daniel stood tall despite his wounds, his eyes burning brighter than ever. Around him, the humans cheered, their spirits unbroken. That night, another legend was written. The hammer could not be captured. He could not be broken. The galaxy was beginning to change. News of the human resistance spread farther than the Council wanted. In the bars of distant starports, alien mercenaries whispered about the hammer. Soldiers who had never seen him in battle spoke of his name as if he were a force of nature, not a man. Some laughed nervously. Others kept their voices low, but the effect was the same. Fear had begun to grow. Daniel, however, knew nothing of the legends being built around him. To him, the war was only about survival. His body bore the marks of endless battles. Every scar was a reminder of the pain he had pushed through. The medics told him his heart could not take much more, that his bones needed rest, but he refused. "If I stop, others will fall," he said quietly. Solara could not escape the weight of her hesitation. After failing to capture him, she faced the fury of the Council. They demanded answers, and she had none. They warned her that her honor was slipping, that another failure would strip her of command. She bowed her head in obedience, but inside, she was torn. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, bloody, broken, but still standing. For the first time in her life, she felt something strange, respect for an enemy. And it frightened her. The Council sent her once more, but this time they gave her no choice. She was ordered to kill him, not capture, not restrain, destroy. They wanted the hammer erased before his legend spread too far. The next assault came, swift and merciless. Alien fleets struck human defenses across 3 colonies at once. Daniel and his squad were pushed to the breaking point. Entire cities burned as alien war beasts marched through streets, crushing anything in their path. The humans fought with desperate courage, but the enemy was everywhere. Daniel led his men into the heart of the battle. His weapon was cracked, his armor barely holding together, but his spirit never faltered. He shouted for his soldiers to hold the line, to fight for every inch of ground. Explosions lit the sky as he charged into the thick of the alien forces. Solara found him there. Their eyes locked across the battlefield, and once again they clashed. Her blade cut through his defenses, driving him to the ground. She could hear the voices of her commanders in her mind, demanding she end him. She raised her weapon high, ready to deliver the final blow. But when she looked into his eyes, something stopped her. His body shook with exhaustion, his chest heaved with pain, but his gaze burned with fire. He did not look at her with fear, only defiance. And in that moment, she remembered her own people's teachings. Strength was everything. To crush a foe who refused to bow was honorable, but to destroy someone whose spirit would never break? That felt like something else. Something darker. Her hand trembled. She hesitated. Daniel saw his chance. With a roar, he struck upward, smashing her blade, aside. The impact sent sparks into the air, forcing her back. He staggered to his feet, bleeding but unbowed. Around them, the humans cheered, rallying to his side. Solara's soldiers saw her hesitation. They whispered, confused, uncertain why their commander had not finished him. Doubt spread like fire among their ranks, and doubt was deadly in war. So, battle ended in chaos. The humans, against all odds, forced the aliens to retreat once more. Solara pulled back with her forces, her heart heavy with confusion. She had failed again. But worse than that, she no longer knew where her loyalty lay, with the council or with the strange human who refused to fall. Daniel collapsed after the fight, carried by his squad back to the safety of the camp. He drifted in and out of consciousness, but even in his weakness, one thought kept him alive. He could not give up. Not now. Not ever. The war front grew darker with each passing day. Human colonies burned, and millions were displaced. Supplies ran low, ships were lost, and soldiers were pushed past the point of exhaustion. Yet still they fought. And at the center of it all was Daniel. He had become more than a man. To his people he was hope. To his enemies he was fear. Even when he collapsed from his wounds, word spread that the hammer would rise again. The stories alone kept entire regiments standing when they should have surrendered. But inside, Daniel was breaking. Every step he took was filled with pain. The nights were worse when he could not hide the trembling of his hands or the fire burning in his chest. He wanted to rest, to finally lay down his weapon. But each time the thought came, he remembered his family and his people. He forced himself to endure. Solara was not the same commander she had once been. Her soldiers noticed the change. She no longer spoke with the certainty of old. She no longer struck with the same confidence. When she looked at her enemy, she no longer saw only prey. She saw willpower, honor, and something that her own people had lost long ago. Her hesitation had grown into something more dangerous: doubt. She questioned the council's orders, their endless hunger for conquest, their demand to crush humans at any cost. But above all, she questioned herself. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel standing tall, his body failing but his spirit unbroken. The council sensed her hesitation. They called her before them, demanding loyalty. They told her she was weak, that her hesitation was treason. They gave her one final command: kill the hammer, or be destroyed. Solara left the chamber with fury burning inside her. She was torn between two worlds: her duty to her people and her growing respect for the human she could not defeat. The next battle was the largest yet. Both fleets clashed in orbit, while armies tore into each other on the ground. The earth shook beneath, the weight of machines, and the sky was filled with fire. At the center once again stood Daniel. He had no right to still be alive. His body was shattered, his armor broken, but he fought with everything he had left. Solara found him in the chaos. Their blades clashed again, sparks flying, eyes locked. She struck with precision, aiming for his heart, but he blocked with his ruined weapon, staggering but refusing to yield. Blow after blow rained down, but still he stood. Finally, she shouted at him through the clash of steel. "Why do you keep rising? Your body is failing. Your weapon is broken. Why do you fight?" Daniel's reply was simple: because someone has to. Those words struck her harder than any blade. For a moment she faltered, lowering her weapon. Around them the battle raged, but between them time seemed to slow. She saw in his eyes something she had never seen before: sacrifice without pride, strength without cruelty. Her soldiers shouted for her to finish him, but she did not move. Instead, she struck the ground beside him, sending up sparks and smoke. Then, in a voice only he could hear, she said, "Run." Daniel stared at her in shock. But he did not waste the chance. He rallied his men and pulled them back, escaping the trap that should have ended them. When the battle ended, the aliens had won the field, but Solara had lost something far greater: her loyalty. Her hesitation had turned into open defiance. She had spared her enemy, and now she knew the council would see her as a traitor. Daniel, carried from the field, whispered to his comrades, "She could have killed me." He did not know why she hadn't, but deep inside, he understood. Something had shifted. The war was no longer just humans against aliens. A single commander among the enemy had begun to see the truth. The Council of Stars was furious. Solara's hesitation on the battlefield had not gone unnoticed. Reports from her soldiers made their way back, and whispers grew louder. Some claimed she had spared the human out of weakness. Others said she had fallen under his influence. Either way, the council saw betrayal. They stripped her of command and sent assassins to end her life quietly. But Solara was no fool. She escaped before they could strike, taking only her blade and a single ship. For the first time, she was hunted by her own people. Daniel, meanwhile, recovered slowly. His body had reached its limit. Every wound reopened with the slightest movement. The medics warned him that one more battle could kill him. His squad begged him to rest. But Daniel knew there would be no rest until the war ended. His people needed him, and he would not let them down. One night, as he sat in his tent staring at the broken weapon that had never failed him, an alarm rang out. The camp rushed to arms, but what came was not an alien assault. A single ship landed at the edge of the base. From it stepped Solara. The humans aimed their weapons instantly, but Daniel raised a hand, stopping them. His body ached as he stood, facing her across the campfire's glow. The silence was heavy until Solara spoke. "I did not come to fight," she said, her voice steady. "I came to warn you. The council will not stop. They will send everything they have to destroy you, even if it costs their empire. And they will not forgive me for sparing you." The humans murmured in disbelief. An alien commander, once their greatest enemy, now stood before them offering help. Daniel studied her carefully, his eyes sharp even through the pain. "Why?" he asked simply. Solara hesitated, then answered, "Because I have seen strength. Not the strength of blood or bone, but the strength of will. My people have forgotten it. You reminded me." She took a breath. "And because I believe if the council wins, the galaxy will lose something greater than just your species. It will lose hope." Her words struck the humans deeply. They had suffered for so long, fighting a war they were never meant to win. Yet here was their enemy, admitting respect, even admiration. Daniel nodded slowly. "Then fight with us." The camp erupted in shock. Some shouted in protest, others lowered their weapons uncertainly. But Daniel's voice cut through the noise. "She could have killed me a dozen times. She didn't. That's enough for me." From that night forward, Solara fought beside the humans. She trained them in alien tactics, showed them how to counter weapons they had once feared, and led raids that turned the tide of battle. Her presence shocked both armies. To the aliens, she was a traitor. To the humans, she was proof that even the enemy could see their worth. But the council did not take her betrayal lightly. They unleashed their full strength. Entire fleets moved as one, gathering for a final strike meant to erase the humans forever. Their leaders declared that the galaxy must never see humans rise beyond their place. Daniel knew the end was coming. He stood before his soldiers, armor cracked, body weakened, yet his voice carried with power. "This will be the fight that decides everything," he told them. "We may fall, but if we do, let it be standing." Solara stood beside him, her blade gleaming in the firelight. For the first time, she did not see him as prey or even enemy. She saw him as an equal. As the stars filled with the glow of enemy, Fleets, both human and alien soldiers, prepared for the final war. The Council believed they would crush humanity once and for all. But Daniel and Solara were ready to show them that some tools could never be broken. The stars burned with war. The Council's fleets stretched across the void, their weapons glowing like suns ready to erase worlds. On the ground, alien war beasts marched in endless rows, and soldiers armed with the most advanced weapons the galaxy had ever seen prepared for the final strike. Against them stood the humans, outnumbered and outgunned. Their ships were old, their weapons patched and scarred, their soldiers weary from years of fighting, yet none of them turned away. They had Daniel, and that was enough. Daniel stood at the front lines, his armor cracked, his body held together by nothing but will. His broken weapon hung at his side, glowing faintly as though it shared his determination. Every breath was pain, but his eyes burned with fire. Solara stood beside him, no longer a commander of the Council, but a warrior without a home. She had chosen her place, and it was here, among the humans she had once tried to destroy. Her blade gleamed as she raised it high. "They think we are weak," she said, her voice echoing across the ranks. "Show them why they are wrong." The battle began with fire raining from the skies. Alien fleets unleashed their fury, but human ships rose to meet them, darting and weaving with reckless courage. Every explosion painted the heavens with defiance. On the ground, soldiers clashed in brutal combat, steel against crystal, fists against claws. Daniel led the charge. Every step felt like it would be his last, but he pushed forward. His men followed, inspired by his refusal to fall. He struck like a hammer, his blows shaking even the strongest enemies. Solara fought at his side, cutting through her own kind without hesitation. Together they were unstoppable. The Council's commanders hurled everything they had at them. Beasts larger than buildings crashed into the field. Weapons meant to tear ships apart were aimed at Daniel directly. Yet he survived every strike, rising again and again. His body was failing, but his will was endless. Solara saw it with her own eyes. She had once whispered that his tool should be broken. His body, his spirit, his will. But now she knew the truth. Some tools were forged not from steel or flesh, but from something greater. And such a thing could never break. As the battle raged, the Council unleashed their greatest weapon, a machine of war the size of a mountain, its steps shaking the ground. Its cannons burned with power enough to erase armies in seconds. The sight of it filled even the bravest with fear. Daniel looked at the machine, then at his men. He knew what had to be done. With a deep breath, he turned to Solara. "Hold the line," he said. "I'll finish this." Before she could stop him, he charged. Every wound screamed, every bone ached, but he forced himself forward. The massive machine fired, but Daniel dodged through the fire, climbing its frame with sheer determination. Explosions lit the sky as he hammered at its core with his broken weapon. At last, with one final strike, the weapon shattered completely. The blast tore through the machine, ripping it apart from within. The ground shook as it collapsed in flames. Daniel was thrown clear, landing broken and bloodied on the battlefield. Silence fell. The humans and even the aliens stared in awe. The Council's greatest weapon was gone, destroyed not by fleets or armies, but by a single man who refused to fall. Daniel tried to rise, his body failing, but Solara rushed to him, catching him before he collapsed. She looked into his fading eyes, her voice trembling. "You've done enough. Rest now." He smiled faintly. "No, not until they're free." Around them, the human soldiers roared in triumph. The alien ranks broke, their morale shattered. The Council's armies fled, unable to face the truth any longer. Humanity had not only survived, they had won. In the aftermath, the galaxy changed. The Council's grip weakened, their power shaken by the simple truth they could not deny. Humanity was no longer a fragile race waiting to be conquered. They were unbreakable, and at the heart of it all was the hammer, the man who showed the stars that some tools, no matter how battered, could never be broken.